Hey, what up guys? In this one, I'm headed out to Spring Valley Golf Course in Milpitas, California. And in my opinion, it's a kind of a gem. So yeah, let's head out to the course and see how I did. All right, first up is a pretty straightforward par 4, rather short, and I end up going left, whereas where you don't want to be. So I have some trees to contend with on my next shot. So here's my next shot. I wanted to punch it out. I wanted to go to the right of this first tree, but I am going left. Luckily, it worked out and I didn't hit any of these trees, so I'm actually through it all and in the fairway. Next up is my approach into the green. I just want to get it on the green so I have a chance to make up my par for the punch-out shot that I hit. Ended up being ever so slightly short, and now I have this look for par. And not a very good attempt here. Ended up pushing it to the right and not even putting a good read on it. So bogey on the first hole, 1 over. Next up is just a straightforward par 3. There's actually a secondary par 3 that sometimes they run instead of this one. Not sure what the origination of that is, but maybe someone who's played this course before can leave a comment below on that. So I end up going onto the green in regulation, and that's my birdie attempt. And yeah, just an easy tap in par. So, you know, getting back on track here from that first hole. Next up is a very short par 4, and there's a lot of room to the right. I was setting up just to play in the center of the fairway, and I ended up drawing it pretty hard. Luckily, I didn't catch any trouble with the out of bounds or anything. So here's my next shot onto the green, and I'm being very, very short. So kind of like the first hole, I'm off the green putting. Same situation here. So I didn't worry about too much on the greens. And this first putt, it doesn't look bad, but it's actually really, really bad. And I have a really long second putt. So I didn't learn from my first putt, and I hit it short yet again. And at this point, I'm just thinking, okay, don't leave this short. But then I blasted on through the break. So I end up 4-putting on the screen and getting a double bogey. All right, next up is a severely sloping left to right par 3. You want to be short right if you're going to miss the green. Don't want to be on the left-hand side like I ended up. And now I have this difficult chip that's going to be impossible to land it close to the flag. So as you can see, it rolls by a good, 10 to 15 feet. Can't really stop it there. So here's me putting back on the comebacker for par. And you're going to see the ball roll slightly backwards when I walk up to it, which is kind of crazy. So I end up just tapping that in for my bogey, and I'm 4 over. Next up is a green light go driver hole. I hit towards these trees that you can see in the middle of your screen, but I think I hit a cart path and end up like in this ditched area. But luckily, as you can see, I have a clear shot to the green. So here's my wedge shot, and I don't end up too far from the flag, but this next putt is really difficult and it slopes severely to the left. So yeah, I didn't play it out enough for enough break, and I didn't even give it a chance. So here's my cleanup for par, and I missed that. As you can see, it rolled back a little bit. I think the person I was playing against would have been a little upset if I would have made a par if it rolled backwards. Next up, hit a really big drive on this par 5. Hit it right down the center. And yeah, feeling pretty good. Taking out the super hybrid next. Crushed this thing. If it would have drawn a little bit more, it would have been on the green. But I end up just being to the right of it. So I guess when thinking in my mind, just chip it close to get a good attempt at birdie. Unfortunately, it didn't chip it all that great. It looks good on camera, but I ended up being more than 10 feet away. And so I have this attempt at birdie. Yeah, just don't give it enough juice. So end up just tapping it for par, but disappointing getting a worse than birdie from how close I was on my second shot. All right, next up is a straightforward par 3. End up being just short and to the right of this one. Didn't hit it very solidly and left the club face a little bit open. So now I have this chip to get up and down. And yeah, this one's turns out to be pretty good, less than 10 feet. That's kind of where I want to be on my chip attempts, is less than 10 feet. Anything there, I'm pretty happy. So here's my attempt for par, and I am draining that one. So feeling pretty good with the putter today. All right, this next hole is a pretty long par 4, but you have a lot of helping wind behind. So I end up hitting it into the middle of the fairway, and I'm looking pretty good for my next shot into the green. This one I chunk it ever so slightly, but the wind actually helped me so much that it ends up going onto the green. So I actually have a decent look at it for birdie. So here's my birdie look. Looks like it's tracking pretty good. And I'm just leaving it ever so slightly short. But easy pars, I'll take those all day. Alright, the 9th hole at Spring Valley is over some water. It shouldn't really be threatening. If you can hit it 200 yards, you'll be fine. End up being on the right hand side. Here's my shot into the green, and it's looking pretty good, but it ends up going a little bit more right than I anticipated, and so I have this little chip for my up and down. So here's the chip. Ends up being pretty decent, you know, within that 10 feet, 5 feet mark. And so here's my cleanup, and you're gonna have to trust me that I made this. Something happens with my camera and it ends up pointing to the sky. Something must have happened with the gimbal, but I end up with another par. Next up is a hard dog leg right par 5. We all hit our balls on this left hand side. I guess we were afraid of going out of bounds on the right hand side, but luckily for my second shot I was clear and I was all systems go with my super hybrid. So end up hitting this really hard, and so I have only a short chip into the green for my next shot. So here's the chip, and yeah, I just barely landed on the front side of the green and it ends up rolling up, and I actually have a pretty close putt for birdie. So here's my birdie attempt, and it's the first one of the day, so feeling good. I got a birdie, can't complain. Alright, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you kind of know what's coming up. Unfortunately, this ball goes out of bounds, and I didn't record my provisional because I thought it was going to be safe. So this is where my provisional landed, so I ended up going out of bounds. So I'm already behind the stroke count. I just want to get on the green and try to make this. I think I focused too hard on trying to make this. I ended up blasting it by, well, not blasting it, but rolling it by pretty far. And this is kind of out of my comfort zone for comeback putts. And yeah, I just ended up missing that. So I ended up just getting a quadruple bogey on this hole because of the out of bounds. Not feeling too great about this one. You know, put a good swing on it, but I end up going out too far to the right, so I'm behind a tree. But this ends up being probably one of my best shots of the day. I barely miss this tree, and I draw this ball around the tree onto the green, so I actually have a pretty good look at birdie. So from around that tree, this is where I ended up. Almost get the bird, end up tapping in for par. So good bounce back this time. Alright, next up, I bring out the mini driver. End up going left on my intended target and trying to, looks like I'm trying to cut the corner here on this hole, but yeah, I ended up in this junk. So I take my 4-iron, and this shot ends up looking pretty good, but it runs to the green, so it was a little too hot. So now I have this really difficult chip, and it's extremely downhill, so I barely landed on the green, but check out the slope on this green. Yeah, it ends up going way by and almost off the green, so I have a long one to come back just for my par here. So here's the par attempt. And yeah, I hit it close enough for the person I was playing with to give it to me, so he just hits it back to me, but yeah, I end up getting a bogey here. Next up, I hit a pretty solid drive on this par 4. I hit it almost too good. It runs through the fairway, and now I have to contend with this tree on my next shot. So I take my 4-iron and just punch it up there, played a little bit of a fade on it, and it ends up being almost on the green, so I just have a really short chip to get on and try to get up and down. And yeah, I was feeling pretty good with the wedge game in the up and downs, and so here's my par attempt, you know, within that 10-foot mark, and I'm draining it for par, so feeling good. Next up is a downhill par 4, and I think there's a speed slot hill that you can hit, and that's what my drive ends up doing. It ends up rolling out to about almost 300 yards. So I have a wedge into the green, and I should have probably taken a gap wedge here and just taken a little bit off instead of trying to roast my sandwich that usually goes 75 yards. So this is what I have for my birdie. And it looks okay, but yeah, didn't give it a chance. It breaks super hard to the right, and yeah, the person that I was playing with makes me put this out, to which I oblige and drain for par. So I'm only 9 over this far and feeling pretty good. Next up is a par 3, and I leave my club face open ever so slightly, which makes it flare out to the right, and I have a very tough chip onto the green, so I have to keep it under this tree, and then I have a hill that I also have to contend with. So I try to hit it directly into the hill. It goes over the green, and so I have to chip again just to get back on and try to one putt for my bogey. So here's the chip attempt. And actually, overall, it wasn't a bad chip. I also got a read from somebody as well. And what I ended up doing here is overreading the person's putt before me, and I played it like terribly. So that was my bogey attempt, and I end up getting a double bogey here. All right, next up, I take a really huge swing on my butt, and I get punished for it. End up pull hooking it on the left-hand side. Hit some trees, but it kicks out into the deadpan. So now I'm taking a mini drive route to try to really get it down there. Luckily, it's downhill and it rolls out pretty far, but now I have this tree to contend with for my next shot. So this was probably my second best punch out. I purposely played a fade. It hits in the front of the green and it ends up rolling past the hole, almost going in, and then I end up being pin high for my green in regulation. So pretty stoked about that. And here's the birdie attempt. And ends up being just ever so slightly short. But hey, after that really bad drive of only like 130 yards, I'll take in a tap-in par any day of the week. So if it wasn't for that blow-up quadruple bogey, I'd probably be sitting pretty good here. Unfortunately, to compensate for swinging so hard on the last hole, I end up taking a little off here and popping up my driver. So yeah, compounding mistakes here, but that's okay. I'm not in the water and I have a shot into the green. So here's my 4-iron. I was hoping the wind would take me there. Didn't hit it that great, and I'm being short. And here's my chip onto the green. And yeah, nice little high shot here with a little bit of spin. Looks pretty good. And I actually have a very close one for my par. Here's the par attempt. And I ended up missing that one. So overall, just get a bogey on the last hole. 12 over. Not a bad day at all. All right, as you can see, didn't play all that bad, but I did have that one blow-up hole. Even had a 4-putt on a hole, but other than that, this course I think is a gem in my opinion. Relatively affordable and it's walkable, so it's a good walk. And I had a really good time out there. So I hope you guys enjoy that one. Keep chasing, and I'll see you in the next one.